Driving without a license. When I was young, I loved to ride mini bikes and I loved to ride motorcycles. I was born to ride. I absolutely love riding motorcycles, dirt bikes, snowmobiles, things like that. And I've always been a pretty good rider, not professional in any way. I'm just a good rider. I just enjoy the freedom of getting away and riding. Well, when I was young, um, there was a guy in my neighborhood, and he had a Yamaha 360. It was a really nice Yamaha 360 Enduro, probably about a 70, 72, 73, 75 time frame bike in that time frame. And I asked him if I could borrow his motorcycle one time, and I believe, in ninth grade, eighth or ninth grade. I think it was ninth grade, and I asked him if I could borrow his motorcycle overnight so I could take and go with my friends up to the top of Ben Lomond and go for a motorcycle ride and take my backpack and go camp overnight. I was so excited because I'd ridden mini bikes 2 or 3 times before that, and I absolutely loved it. So I ended up lying to my dad and said, I'm going to go, backpacking up in the mountains, and we're going to be back at tomorrow. And I lied to my dad because he didn't know I was going to borrow this motorcycle. And this guy was really nice. He was probably I don't know, he's probably 20-year-old guy, really nice guy in the neighborhood. He let me borrow this motorcycle. I get all excited. I lied to my dad. He gave me permission to go sleep in the mountains with my buddies and go have fun. And I went over and got his motorcycle, and I was on heavenly cloud nine, driving with my motorcycle, backpack on, and I was driving over. Now I'm only 14 years old at the time, so I got to be careful of the cops. I'm watching out for cops. I'm driving on the canal road, back roads, dirt roads as much as possible. But I have to go on to meet my friend Kent. I had to go on to the road a little bit. So as I was driving along the road up Fruitland or Mountain Road, I believe it was, I saw a cop. And as I saw this cop come around, thinking, oh, he's gonna try to catch me, I should have just kept going. But I drove up into this little little grove of trees, and I tipped the motorcycle over, and the throttle got stuck, and it just wound way up, and I'm like, oh my heck. Finally I got the motorcycle to turn off. I tipped it over, the throttle got stuck, it just got out of adjustment, so it just locked the throttle into open mode, and it was just spinning out of control. So I turned it off. Finally, somehow I turned it off, and then I had to walk down to my friend's house, which was about maybe a mile away, something like that. It wasn't too far, half a mile maybe. So I walked down to his house, and I says, hey man, let's go. I need your help to fix this motorcycle. I didn't know what to do. So he says, I can't go on the trip now, the overnight trip, camping trip, because my dad won't let me. For some reason, he had a conflict. As a young man, you always think, oh, let's plan this big cool trip, and then they bail out on you. But anyway, he bailed out. I says, well, I need to get this motorcycle fixed, and I didn't know what to do. So I says, can I borrow your motorcycle? Because I can't remember exactly what happened, other than I borrowed his motorcycle to go do something, and I was driving down the street, and a cop come driving up the street. And as soon as I saw the cop, I froze. I locked up the brake. I skidded off to the side of the road, and I act like I was checking something on my motorcycle. And the cop pulled up, and he goes, hey, young man, do you have your license to ride a motorcycle? I go, no. So he gave me a ticket. And my dad had to come down and get me, which I had lied to my dad to go on this overnight trip. I wish I would have just told him the truth. He probably would have just let me go. My dad was pretty nice that way. I think he would have just let me go. But anyway, he comes down and picks me up, and I'm disappointed that I lied to my dad, and he was disappointed that I lied to him. And but anyway, he didn't say a lot. Just took me home. Says, well, you've got to take care of your ticket, and he didn't really get too mad at me, which I was surprised, because I thought I was going to get my butt kicked by him, especially for lying, because he always told me, don't lie to me. If you lie to me, you're going to really have problems. But he was pretty good about it. So I had to go to court, juvenile court, and get my punishment, which was, I think it was like 30 or 50 hours of public service, going around the city and doing community service. So I had to go pull weeds at the church. I cleaned up around my grandpa's store, all the trash. I did a bunch of things and spent a bunch of time thinking about, being legal when I'm wait to get my license. Well, anyway, that happened. I got a ticket. I got caught. I lied, and I didn't get to go on my overnight trip with that motorcycle, which I totally I mean, you can't believe how much I wanted to ride a motorcycle. Motorcycles got me away and got me thinking about other things other than the struggles within my family and my own life. They gave me a great quick vacation, and I just loved the movement and the motion of motorcycle riding. But a follow up on that story. So, like I said, I think I must have been in maybe even 7th or 8th grade. I don't know. I was pretty young, but because I eventually got a motorcycle when I was in 9th grade. Yeah, I must have been in 7th or 8th grade at that time. Probably 7th grade actually. I was probably about 13. So I eventually got my Eagle Scout, and my dad bought me a motorcycle like he said he would. And it was really cool because I got this motorcycle. But I had to push it from North Ogden all the way up to the canal, which was at least a mile away. So at the first few times, I pushed that motorcycle up the road. And I told my dad, he says, now don't ride that motorcycle on the road. I'm like, okay, I won't. So I pushed it up the road all the way up to the hills. And of course, I was fatigued by the time I got there. So I got this idea. I'll start the motorcycle and I'll walk beside the motorcycle so not to push it all the way. So I started it, and what was cool is I would start it and I would walk through Mr. Bates's yard, which the backyard of our yard and Mr. Bates's yard were back to back. So I would walk the motorcycle through his yard with it turned on, with it in first gear. I would just kind of walk quickly, and as I would go through there, I mowed his lawn. He was a really nice man. He'd go, "Hi, Bruce, how are you?" I was like, "How you doing, Mr. Bates?" And he never complained about me walking my motorcycle that was turned on through his yard, even though it kind of made a trail. He was just a kind man, and he didn't get mad at me for trespassing or walking on his grass. He's, "How you doing, Bruce? Going motorcycle riding today, huh?" Just such a nice man. Such a nice man. By the way, he snored like a chainsaw at night. When he opened his window, he'd wake you up at night. He snored so loud. Mr. Bates was literally the loudest snorer. He woke my dad up in the next house over. My dad didn't know what that noise was, that snoring sound. Finally, he went out to find out what it was during the summer, and he walked underneath Mr. Bates's window, and he was snoring. So it's kind of a funny situation. But anyway, he let me walk my bike through. I would walk my motorcycle through. It was an XL 350 Honda, about a 1974, 73, 75 version, somewhere in there. So I would let it go in first gear, and I'd walk quickly beside of it. Then I got this idea. If I stood on it just with one foot, I could ride it, kind of side saddle it, ride it up to the canal, and it would take me a lot less time to get there. Pretty soon, I would start it, I would get it out of the yard, I would put my foot on it, and then I'd just put my whole body over it, and I'd just ride that thing up to the canal as fast as possible and not get caught by any cops. So I went back to driving without a license. So I don't know if I don't really learn my lesson, but I remember one time the cops would chase us up on the canal. And so one time I was driving along the canal, and I saw a cop following me on the road below, watching me. And then I went down into this dip where the cop couldn't see me, and he kept going this way. So I turned around in the dip where he couldn't see me, and I cruised out the other way, and I hurried and got away from him. And then because I had to come home, so I turned off the motorcycle, and of course I could walk it downhill in neutral. I coasted it, so I walked it downhill in neutral, and I pushed it all the way home with the motorcycle turned off, and that's how I got back down safely. But it was kind of fun. I just loved riding motorcycles, and I was willing to do a lot to ride motorcycles. But the main thing I would emphasize that I learned on that is, I guess I would say, it's important for the city to allow us to ride motorcycles someplace, but most importantly, when you ride a motorcycle, be sure to wear a helmet, all the gear, protective gear, so you don't get hurt. One time when I was riding my motorcycle, I was a senior in high school. I had just had my cancer operations. I think I had just had my third cancer operation. Came home, and after a few weeks after my operation, I went out with my buddies in high school. We went out to the Salt Flat area, out 12th Street, West 12th Street in Ogden, out by the Salt Flats where the Salt Lake has. And we went out and played in the mud. We played in this little gravel pit. And as we were coming back in from our day of riding, I came into a gravel pit. And as I was coming into a gravel pit, all of a sudden in front of me, a guy had jumped on his motorcycle, and he was right in front of me. And I looked up and I'm like, oh my heck, he was going to land right on my whole body. His motorcycle was going to land on my whole body. So I just tipped my motorcycle over. And as I tipped my motorcycle over, my foot peg, and I had these soft shoes that I'd worn to work at McDonald's, just soft, like soft shoes. But the motorcycle peg went down like this as I laid my motorcycle down, and he hit my foot with his back tire, and that foot peg went up through my shoe and cut off my two toes. Just cut them, smashed them, cut them right off. And I'm telling you, that hurt like crap. And I'm like, oh great. So I got, my cancer is just healing up. I got my toes cut off, and there's a hole in the bottom of my shoe. There's a hole in the top of my shoe. I'm thinking this isn't going to be good. As I pulled my foot out of the shoe, my toes were just kind of just dangling, just kind of in the socks. They were just kind of in there. So they took me to the hospital. They sewed them back on. They clipped them up. My mom came and she was crying as I was holding her hand because I was crushing her hands as they were clipping my toes off and sewing them back on. They had to do plastic surgery on them later on, but it was really, really, really painful getting my toes cut off. But there again, that's why I'm glad I had a helmet on, but I wish I would have had stronger boots on, or just, better safety gear, because it is so dangerous to ride motorcycles. But I absolutely love riding my motorcycle. I've had tremendous amounts of fun doing that with my kids and so forth over the years.